Figure it out.
Hello, this is Adam Koralik with Figure It Out Productions. The following video is part of our Quick Shoot series.
Hey guys, it's Adam here, and I just wanted to do a video addressing a recent Shenmue story, because a lot of people were hitting me with this story, and unfortunately it's not true, and that's why I want to talk about it, just kind of dispel it a little bit. The basic news story that's been floating around the time I make this video is that Sega confirms Shenmue HD definitely totally happening, courtesy of IGN. You know, thank you IGN for reporting that, etc., etc. Well, it's not true. That's not actually happening. So the core of this story, the reason all of this shit is happening lately, is Sega of Europe apparently does a series called Ask Sega through their YouTube channel. It's essentially an AMA for their channel. And basically they take questions, they pre-screen them, they basically write up responses, and then they give them. Basically a PR representative just, you know, says what their answer is. And somebody asked about Shenmue, and the username of the guy looked really familiar. I think he's actually one of my subscribers, and if he is, kudos to you, dude. And to Sega's credit, they actually responded to this. The question was, you know, are you going to make Shenmue 1 and 2 HD? Is that going to be a thing? And obviously that's something a lot of people wanted, myself included, for quite some time. And Sega, the guy basically said, like, look, yeah, we want to do it, but people have to understand there's a lot of technical and legal complications in the way, but don't get us wrong, we are interested. That's really all he told us. So people misinterpreted that as like, oh, they're definitely working on it, it's totally in development, which is not the case. What he's telling you is the same thing I've been telling you for a long time. And at least he mentioned the legal thing. Aside from myself, and I don't mean to, you know, toot my own horn here, but I haven't heard anyone else talk about that legal complication with Shenmue. So if you're not aware, that's a big issue. See, the thing with Shenmue is, yes, it's Sega's game. They own it completely, it's their property, and Sega is the one who still owns it, and Sega would be the one who's releasing it, so it's like, what's the problem then? Why couldn't they just do it? Well, people forget there were a lot of corporate tie-ins with Shenmue 1 and 2. You know, for example, in the game, the main character, Ryo, has a watch. Now that you see that watch a lot, it's always in the lower left corner of the screen, and anytime you look at it up close, etc., it says Timex all over it. Now Timex is a real company. They actually exist. Now they obviously existed back then, and I don't know the specifics of any of these given deals, but basically we're led to believe that the reason they had a lot of these corporate tie-ins was additional cash to make the game, in exchange for advertisement. But then it could have also had the other effect of making it more reality-based, which of course Shenmue is known for, is it wants to ground you into the reality of the game so that you really take it seriously. And real logos and real companies help make a setting work that way. So basically, what I'm telling you is they'd have to go back to every single one of these companies and try to cut a deal again in order to use their original content, or use their likeness, use their company, etc. So if a company just says, yeah, sure, it's fine, whatever, then you can move on. But, you know, a company might be like, well, maybe, but you kind of have to pay us, or we have to come up with some sort of deal. It just adds a lot of red tape to every single step of it. And then there might also be a company that's absolutely not willing to play ball. Like maybe you go to Timex and they're like, no, absolutely no way, we do not want anything to do with this. And you have to replace them with either Sega brand watch, which you could do because it's just made up shit that Sega could do, or you replace it with another real watch like a Rolex. Granted, that would be a little too fancy for Ryo, I think, but you get my point. And then, but if that's the case, then you have to go to Rolex and get their permission. It's just a lot of shit in the way. So that's one aspect of it. The other thing is the technical limitation. Now, Shenmue is obviously an incredibly complicated game. It was built in a very unique way for the Dreamcast. It's the big first like open world game, and whatever. So to get it to run on modern hardware, you really have two grossly oversimplified options. I'll say that up front. They could either build essentially a Dreamcast emulator for the PlayStation 4 that's designed to, or Xbox One, whatever they put it on, or PC as well, that's just designed to run these two games specifically, and then they make a couple of additional changes, including all these like legal things. Now to do that, that means you have to go back into the source code of the Dreamcast version, change up the Timex watch to whatever else you want, and then export to the Dreamcast version, and then build a PlayStation 4 emulator for it. You know what I'm saying? It's just extra steps. It would be easier and cheaper for them, but still convoluted because you have to go all the way back into the source code like that. The alternative is to essentially do it correctly, which is you take the source code and you just basically export it for the PS4. Again, gross oversimplification, but you get what I'm saying. And that's where you would get true HD and all that stuff out of it. So yeah, that just becomes additionally difficult because of the corporate tie-ins. Unfortunately, this isn't even the first time this has happened with Shenmue. So I got the Japanese versions out here, the Dreamcast versions. In North America and Europe, when you were playing the first game and you went to a vending machine, which you see frequently, it was this generic thing called Jet Cola. Well, people don't necessarily always know that in Japan, on the first game, they actually had Coca-Cola's permission. So you would see actual Coca-Cola machines with Coke and Sprite and Fanta and all that shit in there. And it was like, oh, sweet, that makes it feel more real. But for whatever reason, the deal didn't apply, it didn't transfer over to North America, Coke wanted out, whatever it was. So that could be the route they end up going. You could end up with a version of Shenmue that doesn't have any of those tie-ins to make it, easier for them to re-release the game. And I don't know how I feel about that. All right, so the only example I have to throw at you here is Crazy Taxi. Now that's a famous Dreamcast game, I'm sure a lot of you have played. Has a score by the band Offspring, and it's got all sorts of corporate tie-ins with Pizza Hut and Taco Bell and KFC and I think Fila, which is whatever. So when they re-released that game for the Xbox 360, while it was HD and it was widescreen, it looked much nicer, etc. I noticed immediately I just didn't enjoy it as much because the music was different. And it just threw me. And then the gameplay itself, it was the same, but it didn't feel as real because you were going to all these fake places. Now look, Crazy Taxi, that's not a deal breaker with Crazy Taxi because the gameplay doesn't change that much, it's whatever. But at least with Shenmue, it owns its own music, because damn, that would be a heartbreaker if they didn't own their own music. Thankfully it does. But Crazy Taxi was absurd, and was supposed to be absurd, and the corporate tie-ins were just corporate tie-ins. It's whatever. But with Shenmue, I don't know, man, that could kind of hurt the narrative a little bit, just because it kind of screws up the reality of things. But if that's the price we have to pay, just be prepared that we might have to pay it. So I guess you get into an artistic issue here, where if all these corporate things aren't allowed in, then you have a bunch of generic stuff, and it just doesn't feel as real anymore. And I think, to Sega's credit, again, I think they know that, and I think they know the impact that would have on the game's social experience, as it were. And I'm guessing they want to avoid that, because it's not like they don't know about this legal thing. I mean, that's been an issue for years. Again, I've been talking about this for a long time. It's not like they don't know this. But maybe they're running into issues, and that's unfortunate. But we won't know. We won't know for a long time. My guess is, if I had to call it now, I would say we will get Shenmue HD in some form. I would guess we won't hear anything rock solid about it, though, until next year sometime. I would even go so far as to say June 2017, I think is the earliest you'll hear anything concrete about Shenmue HD. I would assume, and the reason I picked that date is that's around E3, which I don't expect anything out of them at E3 2016 in regards to this, because they're clearly not that far into production, if at all. But I bet you, since Shenmue 3 is intended to release around December of 2017, that Sega is going to want to get out in front of that, because that's the maximum amount of time to get some of to basically get money off of the HD version. And it would do them it would work the best for them to tie it in around the time of the third game, especially if we don't know this, of course, but if Yu Suzuki wants to in any way be able to transfer capabilities from the first and second game over to the third one, then he would have to know that that's in production, and that's a whole other matter. But with regards to the distribution of the HD collection, provided it ever actually occurs, and again, I think it will, it's hard to say if Sega will do a physical or digital release. I would obviously hope for physical, because I'm a very physical oriented person. I like to have things. But with the digital version, I would bet that's what Sega would do, unfortunately. Unless it's like a Hatsune Miku game, they don't seem to care about physical distribution in the West anymore. Japan, they still get physical stuff, so maybe you can import the HD collection from there. I don't know if it would have English subtitles or dubbing in it or whatever, but If you want to help kind of encourage the Shenmue HD ports, go to Twitter and use the hashtag #SaveShenmueHD. Just really encourage Sega, like, yeah man, you know, we still got your back, we will buy the shit out of this thing. If you're still into Shenmue and you're interested in the idea of Shenmue 3, you can still pre-order that for the PlayStation 4 through the Slacker Backer campaign. Your money goes directly to development of the game to make the game even better. You can still reach more Kickstarter, or not Kickstarter, but you can reach more stretch goals where additional mechanics of the game can be made if enough money is raised. So if you're interested, again, there will be a link to that in the description as well. So yeah, that's really it. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you all later.